Hi everyone, welcome to chapter 15 on change management. This is really a chapter summary of the McShane textbook, of course, and it provides an overview of contemporary change management theory, and I'll talk about a few other perspectives on change management today as well, a few favorites that I've come across over the years as well. And let's start this week's lesson on change management initiatives are really hard. Most organizational change efforts take a lot longer and cost a lot more money than leaders and managers initially anticipate. In fact, research from McKinsey and Company shows that 70% of all transformations generally fail. It's a well-quoted fact that for many years that have become the standard expectation of change management initiatives. So why do people even bother doing change management initiatives? Well, the reality is that we have to, because the pace of business is changing so rapidly that if our business isn't adapting to the changing marketplace and consumers, we're going to be that next blockbusters around the corner. And I think I'll share some of my personal perspectives on this. For me, the reality is that often change initiatives are often foisted upon us as managers and leaders who are already working full-time jobs. How many times has your boss often asked you to do something on the side of your desk and you're looking at them like they're crazy, and they ask you to do this important project that you're asked to do. It sounds exciting, but you still have to do your day job. I feel that this is one of the biggest reasons that change initiatives often fail. As I watch other managers go through it, is they struggle to lead the work while keeping the lights on and managing their staff. Leaders often advocate responsibilities to senior staff, but forget that they often have a critical role in ensuring the project is supported through the entire project, including establishing behaviors well after the project is finished. My experience is that if you want to do change management initiatives well, make sure your leader is out there walking the hallways with you, supporting the change and encouraging everyone, but also that you've got a really strong management team that's be working with you as your peer support network that can help you run the business as you focus on the change management initiative itself. So let's talk about the McShane textbook. We'll talk about some additional perspectives also on how to handle yourself when it comes to change management initiatives, and I'll share some of my best practices I personally have had over the years. So the McShane textbook, first of all, talks about the Lewin's force field analysis model. And so this model is really was developed 50 years ago, if memory serves me correctly. And it's still considered one of the most respected ways of viewing the change management process. And I think it's also useful because it really articulates how important it is to understand all the resistance that you're facing at each stage and how much you actually have to work to get through that resistance. And there's many reasons why people face resistance as managers from their employees and as the change agent for the organization. And I think one of the biggest things to always remember is that the textbook does a really good job of this, is explaining the fact that when it comes to resistance, often change agents view it as a terrible thing. They view it as a relationship conflict and undesirable. They think that it's people just having resistance against a person, but they should really view it as a constructive conflict in terms of there's probably something underlying that's really a signal that something's missing in the change initiative to get it going right. And the other things that the textbook talks about is negative variances of change, the fear of unknown from employees, the not inventing here syndrome, breaking routines, incongruent team dynamics, and incongruent organizational systems and processes and structures within the organization that don't really support the change. And we'll talk during the class lecture about each of these elements and how to recognize them and what to do about them. And the textbook also talks about the two most common ways to create change in organization, and one is customer-driven change, and the second is creating a sense of urgency. The first one, customer-driven change in organization, is actually very easy because usually the employees see that problem already. The product's not selling off the shelf anymore. Consumers are complaining on the latest Reddit forum, etc. So all this, when it comes to customer-driven change, is often easy for employees because they know that if they don't do it, they know the company's not going to exist tomorrow. The second one, creating a sense of urgency, I feel is a lot more difficult because It's hard to see that a company needs to change because it's creating a sense of urgency is usually at a time when the company is doing fantastically well. They're making tons of money at the time. And so creating a sense of urgency is often difficult because you as an executive or as a leader see the writing on the wall in terms of what the organization will be like 5 years from now. And so you know that it's necessary to change, to adapt to that place in the next 5 years before it's too late. And you could argue that in an organization like Blockbusters didn't create enough a sense of urgency amongst their management team to the leaders and their staff to understand what was happening to them before it was too late. When we look at also from the McShane textbook, it references 6 strategies for minimizing resistance to change. For example, communicating more effectively within the team. They say that the average change management initiative takes 7 or 9 times to communicate before someone will actually pay attention and listen to it. Creating a learning environment for the organization to learn as they go. Having a lot of employee involvement is the 3rd element. Managing stress is the 4th element. 5 is having negotiations so that employees feel heard and can participate. And then 6 is, in the end, there's going to be some employees that you have to coerce to get on the bus, right? And we use this analogy a lot in change management of getting people on the bus a lot. So you'll hear your leaders and managers often refer to it that way. And textbooks also talks about 4 types of formal approaches to change management of action research, appreciative inquiry, large group interventions, and parallel learning structures. And I'll debrief during the class session around these different 4 styles, and we'll explain the pros and cons between each of these 4s as well. One thing I do want to share here is a little bit of a life lesson. I think it's quite important. A lot of times we focus as leaders attempting to get all our staff through the change together. However, I feel you really can't bring everyone along. And trying to do that and get everyone engaged will effectively cause the change to fail. And let me explain. I feel like 20% of your employees will always get the change. They're the kind of the smart people, the people that really understand, really engage and get on with it. And 60% of your employees will follow those that they trust, and they'll end up following that 20% of employees that get it because they trust them immensely because of how well they know the company and what they're doing. But there's always going to be roughly about 20% of your employees who don't get it, and who have too much to personally lose in the change initiative. And they end up resisting the change because of that, or they just don't understand. I see managers often focus all their efforts on trying to convince that bottom 20% of employees who never get it to come along for the ride and get on the bus. And my feeling is that's wrong. Let me explain. The early adopters actually stop trying, the top 20%, because they see that they're not getting any recognition, any rewards, no support from you as a manager, because all your energy is being invested in trying to get that bottom tier of 20% up. And so they actually stop trying. And then the 60% of the employees see that this top 20% has stopped trying, and so they also give up too. In the end, you have 80% of your employees not engaged anymore. So in the end, you have to leave these employees that are the bottom 20% behind, that do not engage with the change, because you risk the 80% of employees that are actually going through the change themselves. And I think that's such an important philosophy to follow when you're going through change management initiatives, because in the end, I know you want to be kind and bring everyone along, but in many cases you can't, because some people have so much to personally lose relative to the organization's requirements that you just can't bring them along, and it's best to leave them behind as well. Some of the best books that I wanted to just mention here is obviously Leading Change. You'll often hear managers and leaders refer to this as the Penguin book. It's been around for a really long time, and it talks about the 8 key errors that why change happens, and also the 8-stage process of creating major change in organizations. And we'll debrief about that in the organizational behavior class as well. around these 8 steps, because they've kind of become the roadmap for success for designing a change management initiative. And I think it's probably the fundamental structure that most organizations use for change management initiatives. Another book that I really like is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. This one I really liked it because you know what it is, when it comes to behaviors, when you're leading change, you have to focus on the small habits to get people to change. Because when you try to get people to change in big ways, it's often very difficult. So I like what Charles really writes in about this book in The Power of Habit, how important it is to focus on the little small behavior changes to actually get people through that. The next one I'll also talk about is Ram Charan's really old, well, it's an old book now. It's called Execution. And I really like this because it really talks about the discipline of getting things done in organizations through change management initiatives. And I think that's a great book as well. And Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore is also a fantastic book because he wrote this book in terms of creating disruption in marketing and technology. And but I think it really does articulate actually really successful change management strategies in terms of how do you get people to cross the chasm as he describes it. And then the last, probably my favorite, has always been this 4 Disciplines of Execution. The reason why I like this one, because it really articulates the fact that the realities of change management initiatives is often we're trying to do them when we've got work to do. And there's this whirlwind of daily activity that distracts us every single day. And this to me has a really useful tool. And my own personal experience with my own managers and my own staff is that I think this is fantastic when it comes to using this tool to execute change management initiatives. And then also add some additional sources on the YouTube links. In the Prezi slides, you're going to find a few videos that I really want you to pay attention to and watch before the class. One is Jason Clark video at a TED Talk talking about embracing change. He does a fantastic job of talking about how to get people through change management initiatives as well. And then I also think that Changing Your Mindset and Helping You Embrace Change by Manu Shahi is also a great TED Talk, which I've embedded into the Prezi slides as well. And then I think those are probably the 2 ones that I think that you should really pay attention to and watch those videos before we debrief during class. And and Isn't It Obvious by Eliyahu Goldratt, which is also a fantastic book if you want to pick up that book on change management, because it really talks about the 4 elements that you really have to get right in terms of change management initiatives. So watch those 3 videos on the Prezi links, and I will see you in class shortly. See you guys soon. Bye.